So welcome everybody. And again, my name is Lynette Owens. I'm the founder and global director of Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program. I am dialing in from the Boston area. I'm a mother of two teenagers, and I founded this program for Trend almost 14 years ago now. So tonight, I hope to share with you a lot about what we've discovered over the years in doing this work, not only across the United States, but we are currently active in 20 countries around the world. And I spend a lot of my time studying, researching, speaking, writing on the topics of kids, families, and the intersection of technology and education in their lives. It certainly has been an exciting time, a challenging time, and over the last 18 months, a particularly interesting time. So again, if you'd like to listen in on Spanish, choose the globe icon and choose Spanish as your channel, and Gigi will be your interpreter. Please go ahead and submit questions anytime during the evening using the Q&A option. And I'll also be prompting you with questions, and I encourage you to chat with each other about your thoughts and with each other about, what other people's questions might be. And finally, when we end tonight's session, you will see a survey that pops up once you close out of Zoom, and would love your feedback. So please take the 3 minutes to give it if you can. So first, I want to say hello to all of you. I saw some of you dialing in, or sorry, typing in the chat where you're from. So welcome coast to coast. And I know it's late for some of you and still a little bit early for others, but thanks for joining us. Having that extra hour on Sunday, I still feel it a little bit off, getting up earlier and getting more tired earlier towards the end of the day, but I think it helps a tiny bit this week. What you'll see to the right of your school's name is an attendance code. And the organizer of your school may need this code to confirm that you in fact attended this evening. Some schools are running raffles, so this could be your way of entering that raffle. So go ahead and make a note of your attendance code for your school. I will show this screen again later on tonight. The code is actually easy to remember. It's actually today's date dash a 2-digit code for your school. So 110921 dash a 2-digit code for your school. All right. So, and one last thing before we get started, this session is being recorded. So for all of you that are attending, the person who organized the event for your school will get a copy of that recording if they have requested it of us. So the recording will be made available on request. So I'd like to get to know you a little bit more. So using the poll options in front of you, tell me, how old is your oldest child? Are they A, 5 years old or younger? B, 6 to 10 years old? C, 11 to 14, or D, 15 and older? How old is your oldest child? This gives me a good sense of where we might want to spend a little more of our time in the conversation tonight. How old is your oldest child? A, B, C, or D? Okay, I'll just give it another second, then end the poll. All right, so it looks like a lot of you are in that sweet spot of 11 to 14 years old, followed closely by the 6 to 10-year-old age range. And then actually, this is actually unusual for tonight because in these sessions, I typically have a lot more on the younger end. So there's quite a few of you who have an oldest child that's in high school or even older. So we will talk about things that are relevant for all of these age groups. This gives me a really good idea of where to focus our time. Okay, and the second question I'm interested to know is, what are you most interested in talking about tonight? Is it A, managing screen time, B, helping my kids stick to age appropriate content, C, dealing with online bullying or hate, D, ideas for positive uses of the internet, or E, not sure, just here to learn something new? What are you most interested in? A, B, C, or D, or E? I'll just give that another few seconds. Okay, so no surprise on this one either. Most of you are very interested in making sure your kids are sticking to stuff that's okay for them, for their age ranges. So we will definitely be talking about that, as well as all of these other issues, but this gives me a good sense of where I might proportionately spend time. All right, so just a comment on what's just happened to us. And I think we're still learning what just happened to us these past 18 months or so. And I'm talking in particular about our relationship with technology. Maybe there are ways that we learned to use technology that we never thought we would before. Maybe we were a little more lenient with our kids and screen time for a period of time over the last 18 months. Maybe we said yes to the phone or a new app that we never thought we'd say yes to for a while. Whatever the case may be, a lot has changed. And it's really causing us to reevaluate our relationship with technology. Maybe some of you are working from home for the first time and you really like it. And maybe that's going to be a model for you for the foreseeable future. But even though that is true, a lot did not change. And namely that our kids now more than ever still need our guidance, because by all measures, kids and adults alike have seen our screen time and our reliance on the internet grow astronomically. And that doesn't mean, though, that the risks aren't still there. They are very much still there. But as I mentioned before, so are the benefits. And that's why it's really important now more than ever that we teach children about what good digital citizenship is. It is about understanding risks and how to avoid them, but it's also a whole bunch of other things too. And tonight's conversation really is the beginning of thinking about this in a framework, a way that you can think about how, in the end, do I help my child not only be safe online, but also use the internet in positive, productive, and ways that actually help them and others around them. So digital citizenship, and tonight we will talk about how do you be safe and secure online? How do I make sure that my children are only looking at the things that are okay for them? But it's also about digital literacy, which is basically this, that if I understand the importance of something, let's say of security or privacy, the literacy part of this is, well, how do I actually do that? Where do I find privacy settings? And what does this kind of security setting mean over that one? That's an important part of digital citizenship, as is how we behave, ethics and community. What are the rules of engagement when I'm on a certain game or website or social media platform? What is the right or wrong ways to treat others? And finally, we want to cover this concept of mastery, because very often when we talk to children about the use of technology, it's a really long list of what not to do. But we have to remember that it's equally important to talk to children about the ways they should be using technology. Again, it's a conversation about positive and productive uses of it too. So we will cover all of these things tonight. And this is the framework that we like to use in our program. It's the idea of, let's help our children be online, but while they are there, how do we help them be safe, be kind, and be savvy? And what we mean by being online is it's really up to us as parents to set up the right environment, rules, and example. But in addition to that, when we talk to kids about being safe, the first time they get a phone, the first time you say yes to social media, the first time you say yes to a social connected game, how do we help them protect their privacy, their personal information, and even their physical selves? On being kind, very often this conversation is about how to treat others, but we will also talk about how to talk to children about kindness being directed towards oneself. And especially in a world where almost everything you do online is connected to others, is more social, the tendency to perhaps equate one's own value to how popular you are on a social networking app or how many likes you get is just starting to create a sense of anxiety among young people. So we have to, as parents, remember that kindness is about how we treat others, but also how we treat ourselves. And finally, being savvy is about encouraging good habits and good uses of technology. So really quickly on setting up the environment, this is made up of, a couple different things. The first is just around the physical environment, and the next is around the technical environment. So, for them, it's just making sure that their physical uses of technology are healthy. There is some recent research from the Digital Wellness Lab coming out of Children's Hospital and Children's Hospital Boston and Harvard Medical School that showed that one of the issues with increased screen time use that children are starting to experience are things like neck and back aching and headaches to some extent. So the degree to which you as a parent can make sure that when they're working on homework or even when they're gaming, they're not hunched over, their posture is good, they're resting their eyes, and they are taking breaks. This is actually a really important part of safe and healthy use of technology. Now, on the technology side of things, there are things you want to do to set up your home so that it's safe for everybody, including your kids. So, for your home router, if you've never changed the password, which many people don't do after they buy their router the first time, make sure you do that. That's something that really should be done on a regular basis, just like other things that you should change your password on. And especially for those of you with the younger ages, consider separating the network where your sensitive devices like your work laptop, or maybe it's a home desktop with lots of photos you would never want to lose or tax filing information, maybe put that on your main network and let the kids' devices that don't have sensitive information like an Xbox or a Kindle reader on a guest part of your network. So we recommend that because if your child ever did click on something or accidentally on their iPad, tap on something that ends up compromising their device, it will not compromise yours because they're on different parts of the network. Wi-Fi extenders, as well as staggering use time, is just a good idea so that you, as families who might all be at home still, not trying to be on top of each other, trying to give each other privacy for work or school, homework, making sure that nobody is having bad connectivity. So it's just a good idea to do those two things. Maybe you're not at home as much and your children are fully back to school, but there are moments where everybody's sort of competing for that internet connection time. So the extender makes sure everybody has good connection around the house, and having conversations about who's going to be streaming what and when helps you maintain peace in the house. In terms of security, We highly recommend using security software on every device that connects to the internet, including mobile devices, by the way. And within the security software, turning on the firewall feature, which watches traffic coming in and out of the device. It's like a bouncer saying, you're allowed to come in and you're not allowed to come in. So again, those two things are really important, especially with younger kids in the house who might accidentally click on something, download something that in the end wasn't what they thought it was. And it might actually be, malicious software of some kind that would be dangerous if you're working from home, or dangerous for even when you're using a laptop for banking, for example. So you want to make sure strong passwords, we'll talk more in a bit about how you can encourage that with kids as a good habit. And multi-factor authentication in the chat. Does anyone know, do you all use multi-factor authentication? If you're using that on Facebook or Instagram, Roblox has it, TikTok has it. If you're not using it, if your children's apps don't have it on, make sure not just yours is on, but theirs is too. What is multi-factor authentication? Sometimes it's known as two-step verification. Sometimes it's known as two-factor authentication. It's basically a second level of security beyond a password. If you lost your password, then someone could ideally just crack right into your Facebook account or your bank account, right? But if you have multi-factor authentication on, that means that after you enter a password, you will then be sent a code, either in email or a text. So if someone stole your password, but they don't have your phone, they won't be able to get in your account. They need those two things in order to get in. So not just your accounts, your children's accounts too, everything, every device or every app that they're using, make sure this is on, okay? And these cyber criminals are getting a lot more crafty these days, especially because they know everybody is online all the time now. Finally, if you do connect outside of the home, maybe some of you use this for work already. If you're traveling or on the go, your kids included, use a virtual private network, because that protects information from you traveling to another place, to another site. Let's say it's a password, a credit card number, whatever it is. Please use a virtual private network. For ideas on good security software or virtual private networks, I recommend you could do a Google search, but I like cnet.com, cnet.com. There are other great technology review sites. Full Confession Trend has products that are available in both, but you'll find many good products in the top 10. So buy a reputable one, keep it updated. Unhealthy habits, just make sure you're updating everything, including your kids' devices, like I said, and you could set it to auto update, especially apps, because a lot of those updates these days have to do with security flaws. Sometimes they're just updating to make the experience better on the app, but a lot of times in recent months, it's been about security flaws. So make sure you're updating regularly. And in terms of good, strong password skills, one idea with younger kids in particular, to get them to think about this early and as a good skill into their lives, really the longer the password is, the stronger it is. So one idea is to think of a sentence. It could be really fun. I made up this one: might need to buy more toilet paper soon. But they could come up with a really fun sentence that they'll remember, and make the first letter of each word your password. You can change the word to the number 2 and make that part of the password. Throw in an exclamation point or an asterisk as a special character. It's a good habit to help your kids. Every time they download a new app, maybe you can help them come up with the password together as a sentence, and that would be a good way for them to remember. Finally, back up everything. And if you can, don't just rely on Apple iCloud or Google Cloud. That's great to have those. They give you some for free, and then they start charging you for after a certain space. But if you can also get the hard drive backup in addition to the cloud backup, I recommend having both. If you ever, one of those gets compromised in some way, let's say you drop the hard drive and it actually breaks, you have the cloud backup. Or if the cloud part gets compromised, you have the hard drive backup. All right. On tech tools, now this is where we're going to get deep into, a lot of you said that you were concerned about age inappropriate things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of those tools that are actually free to you. In fact, everything we're going to talk about right now are all free to you, but settings are, as you know, they're in the devices, they're in the apps, your ISP might actually offer it, not necessarily for free, but they might offer it. Your phone service provider might also offer things like family settings, parental controls, you name it. Okay. But I want to highlight a few here because these are some of the ones that I get asked about the most from parents across the country. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on each of these. I just want to highlight them for those of you who did not know that these were available to you. So if you want to put in the chat any families who are Apple users, so iPads, iPhones, so on. Anybody out there? You can put it in the chat if you're an Apple family. Okay, so if you're not familiar, there's a setting called screen time. And it's a little bit deceiving because even though screen time is a setting that helps you manage their screen time, it also helps you manage a lot of other things, such as limiting the kinds of apps they're allowed to download. Okay, what this requires is for you to set up iTunes accounts for each of your kids under yours. All right, and here you see this is my phone, but these are my two kids down below. And if you select one of them, you can see how they've used the device. You can see every time they picked it up. You can see how much time they're spending on this app versus this site and so on. But here you can also limit how much time they're allowed to spend. You could actually say they're only allowed to use Roblox for 1 hour or Instagram for 30 minutes a day. It also allows you to restrict the kind of apps they're allowed to download. If it's above their age, it won't be able to be downloaded. So I recommend for all of you Apple families, if you haven't already used screen time, go to the settings and look up screen time. Very easy to use. It's a good way to limit the kinds of content that your kids are seeing. Okay. Here's the thing though, not everybody uses Apple, right? How many Android using families do we have out there? Do you have your kids using a Samsung or maybe a Google Chromebook, anything like that? You can put it in the chat. So Google also came up with a similar thing, but it's an actual app called Google Family Link. Okay, so any Android families out there, I highly recommend you download Google Family Link. It enables you to do a lot of the same things that Apple Apple Screen Time allows you to do, including filtering the kind of content and screen time limitations. But if they're using an Android phone, it's also you're able to track their location. So great. I see some of you are already using Google Family Link. They only launched that about maybe 3 years ago now, maybe almost 4. So I do want to call something out about Google. So here's a pop quiz for you. What app does Google own that every single kid loves to use that shows videos? What app does Google own? Yeah. Okay. There was a time where people didn't know the answer to this, so it seems like a lot of you know. So YouTube is that app. Google bought YouTube many years ago for a lot of money. And the thing about YouTube is we all have a love-hate relationship with YouTube, right? Because you can find almost anything you want, but then you have no idea what your kids might be exposed to. So today, if you have a really young kid, and many of you do not have your oldest children as that age, but some of you might have younger kids who are, under 6 years old, let's say. Your option is YouTube for Kids. That's a great app that just shows very good content for little kids. But it's not really helpful for kids once they get to be about 8, up to 15 years old, right? But between 8 and 15, you're not really ready for them to see just anything on YouTube. There could be adult content on there you don't want them seeing. So finally, earlier this year, Google launched what's called YouTube supervised accounts. And if you have a Google account, which this is true for anybody, whether you use Apple or Android, doesn't matter. If you have a Google account, you will now be able to create a YouTube experience for kids between 8 and 11, 12 to 14, and 15 to 17. And they used the words explore, explore more, or most of YouTube. So if you supervise accounts have nothing to do with YouTube Kids. YouTube Kids is already, it's basically it's a walled garden where YouTube decided only these videos will be showing there. Supervised accounts is a way to have access to the bigger YouTube, but with some fencing for kids based on their ages. And so is it perfect? Probably won't be extremely perfect, but gosh, this is better than nothing. So I do applaud YouTube for finally dealing with this issue. So I highly recommend giving it a try. Look up YouTube supervised account, and you can decide whether your child can have Explore, which will be some content, Explore More, a little bit more, and most of YouTube, which is everything except the adult stuff. Okay. So I'm glad that was helpful. Some of you were not aware of that. I'm going to move more quickly through these next few apps here. Anyone ever hear of TikTok? Anybody's kids using TikTok? Or anybody's not allowing their kids yet to use TikTok? So wherever you are on the spectrum of TikTok, right? Again, another love-hate relationship that people have with TikTok. If you're not ready, I would like to make you aware that there is a setting. I applaud TikTok because they were early with this. This was last year. They provide something called family pairing. Family pairing is a way for you and your child to ease into the TikTok experience. What this requires is for you to download TikTok on both your device and your child's device. Okay, but you don't necessarily have to become a TikToker or make up dances and film yourself, right? It simply allows you to have control over their account. So go to the settings and look for something called digital well-being. And there you will find a setting called family pairing. And you simply will designate your phone with the TikTok app as the parent one. And then when you download it on your child's phone, you'll designate theirs as the child's TikTok account. Once you're in there as the parent on your device, you can decide time limits. You can decide whether to filter out content that's not suitable, so it's mostly child-friendly content, and who's allowed to actually message them. This is, again, a nice way to ease into the TikTok experience with your kids once you are ready. Okay, sounds like some of you have older kids and they're already on it and doing really fun things, and some of you aren't quite there yet, but know that TikTok family pairing is there for you as a way to ease you in. Okay, anybody's kids use Roblox? You can put that in the chat. The thing about Roblox is that people mistake. Roblox is not a game. Roblox is a community of games and gamers and game developers. And there's some really innocent games. I play, oh, I forgot the name of it, but the one that, you know, you have a bee that follows you around and you just dig for pollen, and then the bee follows you and you make honey and you get more bees. And so it's very, very innocent, right? But there's hundreds and thousands of games. And some kids even are great at developing their own games. It's a great way to encourage creativity. But here's the thing about Roblox, okay? Even though it's not real people's faces, it's all avatars. It's real people playing, and it's not only young people, okay? Roblox themselves have told us their community is aging up, getting older. Lots of older teens and young adults on Roblox. The other thing about Roblox is the chat is open, okay? So anybody, any user can chat with others depending what your settings are like in Roblox. So I highly recommend, if you have not done this already for your kids, you definitely should make sure that you have set the privacy and security settings in a way that is going to make it safe for them, okay? You can have lots of fun with it, but go into settings, set up security, you know, put in a PIN that, just like in many devices, you need a PIN in order to unlock it or change the settings, okay? You can turn on two-step verification. You can decide who is allowed to contact your child, and so on. Make sure you are using that if you're not already doing that for your kids' Roblox accounts, okay? The other thing to be mindful of with Roblox is they do a very good job of monitoring those chats, okay? So if someone older chatted to your child and said, hey, where do you go to school, or where do you live? That message will never appear because their moderation techniques don't allow those kinds of messages or questions to be posted. They know that that could be the beginning of something not so safe for others. But I will say this, just last month, Roblox announced that they're going to introduce a new feature, which is voice chatting, live voice chatting with each other. Today it's only text, soon it will now be voice chatting. But they are saying that only 16 years and above will be allowed to do that on Roblox. And how are they going to verify that? They're going to require a selfie and uploading of some kind of identification, formal identification. Could be a driver's permit, license, whatever. Now, I'm not going to pass judgment on this either way, but you just need to be aware that that's coming. And, you know, okay, that's great. That's a great way to confirm someone's age, but you're giving up personal information in the process. So I will leave you to decide how you want to handle that. But again, 16 and above only. This won't be an issue for those under the age of 16. Okay. All right. Anybody hear of Discord? You have older kids, so this particular audience tonight has a little bit older age range. So any kids using Discord out there? Okay. Maybe there's a question, what is Discord? So Discord has basically been around for a while, very popular among the gaming community, older people who've been gaming for a long time. But it became very popular and started to age younger over the course of the last 18 months because Discord is, think of it as an Uber chat app, okay? Meaning you could create a group chat, right, on your phone, but it's hard to manage, right? And then that's just it. It's just the group chats you create are just the people who are in your contact list. Discord allows you to do the same. You can create those chat groups with your friends, but you could also join a chat room of people in the world who all love Harry Potter or the Marvel Cinematic Universe or, you know, whatever, BTS, I don't know, whatever, something that they love, right? So it's a combination of chat app and social network, if you will. So just like any other social place, you have to be mindful of protecting your privacy and making sure your kids are using it in safe ways, knowing that they don't know everybody that's on it. So they got to be careful about what they're doing there. So I'm just showing you some screenshots of the fact of you can protect privacy. You have the ability to limit who they can connect with, just as you could in Facebook, for example. And you can block users, you can report users that are not behaving well. But if your child ever asks you, can I use Discord? I highly recommend you become familiar with it yourself, do some research, and make sure you encourage the use of all these settings. Whatever your rules are for other apps, who are they allowed to connect to, who are they allowed to chat with, should be the same here, particularly because they're doing great work very recently. They're still not quite there all the way. I think there's some, I think they'll get there though. I think they're doing all the right things, but it's definitely something that you need to be mindful of. I'm going to pause here because I got a few more things to talk to, but I see some questions coming through. And if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and not the chat. We're only able to really address questions that are in the Q&A and not so much on the app. So I think there's a couple questions here about your child. Is it true when you download apps to your phone that you allow access to the contents on your phone? That's a good question and a very complicated one. Let's just say this. Apps need to connect somewhere. So as long as you are connecting on the internet in some way, you're always vulnerable, right? You're always opening yourself up to vulnerability. And the other thing is, when you download an app, and we'll talk about this on privacy, the privacy section, there is data being collected immediately. As soon as you download an app, right, they start to collect what kind of phone you're using. They know things like how often you're accessing the app, what you're using it for. If it's a social network, they know who you're connecting to, what you're liking, what you're downloading, what you're watching, right? So all that kind of data gets collected about us. And as I tell the kids when I used to go into classrooms before COVID, welcome to your public life. As soon as you're on the internet, welcome to your public life. So yes, as soon as you download apps, you are allowing access to a lot of things. Having said that, if you do some of the things that we talked about tonight, use security software on every device that connects to the internet. Be very mindful of who you're connecting with, where you're clicking, and only posting and doing things that you absolutely need to do. One of the things that I tell people when your kids download a new app, or you download a new app, so a lot of times it asks you, can I have access to your contact list? Can I have access to your microphone? Can I have access to your camera? For some of the apps, it makes sense. But for other apps, you think, do I really need to do that? Finally, location is one. And I highly recommend in your phone, turn off location services for those apps that don't need to know your location, okay? Some apps need it, like Google Maps, but not all apps do. So I know that's a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, as soon as we connect, as soon as we download, all kinds of data is being collected about us. The question is, what of those things are we comfortable with or not? Okay. Here's a question: how safe are the passwords generated by the iPhone? I think it's okay to use a password generator, whether it's through iPhone. Google has one. Trend, my company, has one, a password manager. I think it's fine to use those, especially if they're really good at making them long and hard to remember, as long as you change them regularly. Make sure you're doing that. Like I said, if you don't use a password manager, you could also do that trick with the long sentence, and that way you remember that, and it's not stored anywhere other than in your head. But if it's not easy to remember, then a password generator is probably better. All right, I'm going to move on. We have lots more questions, and we'll stop. We'll answer more of these as we go forward. Two more apps that I want to talk about. Anybody's kids use an Xbox out there? Any Xbox families out there? Okay, last fall, Xbox announced their own family settings app, which is so great for those of us who don't want to have to go all the way to where the console is, because some of us are lazy. And from the app, you can actually limit how much time they're on the device. You can do other things as well, like you can filter if they ask, can I please download this new game, or can I please connect with this person as a friend request? You can approve those. Those have to, you'll see it comes to you and you have to say yes or no if they're allowed to or not. So again, everything I just showed you right now is free. All of the things that I just shared with you so far, including this final one. Like I said, I've been doing this work for almost 14 years now. And one thing that I realized over the years, and this is a philanthropic program we've been doing everywhere, is there's some things that these apps don't all do. So we decided to launch TryMicro Family. It's free. I'd love for you to give it a try at tmfamily.care. We're trying to make it easier for you to set all those settings from one place instead of having to go to that app and that app and that app and that, right? We're still in the process of developing it. So we're looking for parents to try this out, bang on it, give us the feedback. We want to build something that's useful for families, because I really, after all these years of these talks and everything I've seen and observed, we could do better. We could do better to help you. All right, let's talk about this setting the rules. So question for you, put it in the chat. What's one rule that works for you in your house? What's a rule that works for you in your house? And you can submit this in Espanol as well, because I can ask Gigi to share it with me. What's a rule that works in your house? Okay, great. Homework first before, I assume before fun screen time, right? Some of the homework might actually have to be done on screens increasingly. Is there a rule in your house that works for you? Okay, great. No gaming after 9 p.m. Yes. No phones at the dinner table. Yes. That's a very, very good one. No iPad during the week. Ooh. Fantastic. Oh, yes. Charging the devices in the kitchen. I love it. Awesome. Great. Everything down at 8. The new app requests come to you. That's fantastic. So awesome. So and I love all the messages in here. I will say that I will just say this on rules, since many of you have them in place, and you a lot of you have a sort of older kids who've already had to deal with this. But I will say that if you have some younger kids that you're sort of struggling with on the rules, not just setting them, but like sticking to them, I think it's a good idea, if you haven't really developed a good rubric for rules yet, to think about these 5 things. What are they allowed to use? When are they allowed to use it? How long, where, and with whom? And as you think about these rules, having your kids come up with some of them or give input, right, into the rules, like, and not just the rules, but what are the consequences if they break them, right? And if you have more than one kid, having them both involved or more than one of them involved is a good idea, because you don't even have to be the one enforcing them. They end up doing that to each other, which is fantastic to see. But I do want to focus on this one area. If you're not sure, I heard about this new app. I just don't know anything about it. Your kids come home and they said, can I please download this? So-and-so is down playing this game. Can I play it too, right? I'm a huge fan of Common Sense Media. Common Sense Media gives great third-party reviews of apps, games, and I'm just putting it in the chat here. video games, websites, even movies, by the way, and television shows, to tell you whether or not it's okay. Because the app developer is going to tell you, oh, it should be, you know, this age, this app is okay for age 12. But even if they say that, you might say, I don't know if that's okay for my 12-year-old, right? That's why I like to go to a third party like Common Sense. The other thing let's talk about is the screen time issue. Okay, some of you said that screen time was an issue for you, and we're a big fan of the 24-hour exercise. Again, I mentioned the Digital Wellness Lab. These are pediatricians who have, and researchers who have dealt with children really on the extreme end, right? They call it problematic interactive media use. Okay, they don't call it addiction. Let me tell you why they don't call it addiction. Okay. Can everybody hear me, by the way? I see someone says they're not able to hear. Can you just tell me? Okay, you can hear me. I'm sorry if you can't hear me. Hopefully you'll be back with us soon. Okay. So I want to talk about the concept of addiction versus problematic interactive media use. And I really like Dr. Michael Rich's explanation of this, that very often with an addiction, the answer to that is abstinence from whatever it is, the substance, item, or activity that you are addicted to. Okay. Here's the thing about technology and the internet. We can't just stop using it. So it's troubling for a lot of the physicians who deal with kids that have problematic use, calling it an addiction, because again, the answer is not abstinence from it. The answer is, how do I find a healthy way to factor in the use of technology in my life, right? So here is the 24-hour rule. When your child is begging for screen time, I think it's important for us to think about, and to help them think about, the fact that there are only 24 hours in a day. So in that 24 hours, you can talk to them about this. You can do a pie chart. You can have them write it down, and you ask them and you talk about this. There are things we have to do in a day that are helpful to us for our physical health. So how many hours in the 24 have we spent doing things that are good for our physical health? Sleeping, having meals, exercising, taking a walk, riding our bike, so on. Okay. Now, on top of that, how many hours are we spending to support us as learners? How much time are we in school, doing homework, reading, maybe practicing an instrument or another hobby? Maybe we like to paint, or some other skill or hobby that supports us as learners. And on top of that, how many hours are we spending supporting the relationships that are important in our lives with friends and family, neighbors, and so on? Could be with technology. It doesn't have to be with technology, but they support relationships that are important in our life. Okay. So now you add all of those things up, and whatever is left, okay, there will be some time left, can be used for screens. Okay. It doesn't mean, though, that if there's 5 or 6 hours in that block, that they can use screens that entire time. In that time, if you allow screens, that's where the rules and the tools that we've talked about can help you. Some of the suggestions that I think have been really wonderful that other parents have done to help manage screen time is to have this conversation about all those important things I do every day. And then for the time left over, creating something like an activity menu, or, write ideas of things they can do on slips of paper, fold them up, put them in a box, and the kids can pick out activities for the time left over. And some of it can be screen time, and some of it can be, offline games, outside, and so on. So that's an idea of how to think about screen time when it comes to your children, and in the course of a 24-hour period. It helps our children start to think, yeah, I really do need to do all of these other things too, because those are good for me. And once I have done all of those things, that screen time for fun is okay too, because kids need that downtime too. Okay. Finally, with setting a good example, I'm going to ask you, what rules do you have for yourself? You can put it in the chat. Do you have rules for yourself about technology? It's okay if you don't. If you don't have any rules, that's fine. Let's say if you work from home, how do you cut off work time from home time? Does anyone charge their phone not next to their bed? Oh, this is a good one. Timers on your social apps. Very good. Good for you. Good for you. You put your phone down when your child's speaking to you. Yeah, I like to do the screen face down when someone wants to talk to me. I think it's a good idea. Putting down the phone. Yep. Charging it somewhere else in the house. Yeah. I'm not so good about that one because my phone is my alarm clock, but it's a good rule. It's a good rule. Okay. So, I think it's important because we have to ask ourselves if we're expecting our children to behave a certain way, are we modeling that too? It's going to be hard for them to follow a rule that we ourselves may not be following. So again, just something to ask yourselves. I know it's hard, but it's a good idea to think about it. I'm going to go through these next parts fairly quickly, even though I know they're important, but I know that a lot of you were worried about that age inappropriate stuff. And so we're going to go through the rest of this fairly quickly, but I'm happy to answer questions at the end here. I want to say on privacy settings, you should obviously use them because, and I'm showing you Fortnite here, that by default, they're not necessarily on. So make sure before your child ever uses a new app or device, make a game of it, have them look for the privacy settings with you and see how long it takes them, and have them tell you what kinds of privacy settings there are, and have them set it with you. I think it's a good idea because every time in the future, they should be thinking about that as they get older. How am I protecting my privacy before I use this app? The other thing about privacy is that, as I mentioned earlier with the question someone asked, when you download an app, are you basically giving permission for a lot of stuff to be collected about you? The answer is yes. And usually it's in that text. When we don't read it, we just scroll by all of that legal mumbo jumbo, right? And we just hit I accept. But in the legal language, there's actually a phrase that's written differently, but it basically means this. On this app, you own everything you post, do, everything you're doing on here. You own it, right? But you give us the right to use that information whenever, wherever, forever. Part of what you're accepting when you hit I accept is you have handed over those rights. And most of the companies that's collecting that data is really just for advertising. I think it's important to talk to our children about this fact, though, because when we tell them really nothing's ever private on the internet, when you use privacy settings, it does protect them from people you don't know out there, but there is zero privacy between you and the company who owns that app or that game or that device. And there's all kinds of data being collected all the time about us. So when we tell our children, hey, nothing's ever private, we're not just trying to scare them. This is the truth about why apps are free. We actually are paying with something else, and that something else is our personal information. Okay. When you talk to kids about it that way, my experience in classrooms has been they actually get very incensed. Some of these students get very irritated by this fact. But, I said, well, that's the way the model works today. And until we get to a day where now using Google for search is a paid option. Until we get to that day, this is the way it works. You're always paying with something, and that is your information. When it comes to cybercrime, your kids are not necessarily being targeted by cyber criminals, but again, they go where the people go. The criminals try to trick anybody. They trick them with fake links on Google. They trick them with pop-up ads that pretend to offer you something free. So making sure that you're using security software on every device that your kids are using is a really important thing. And if they make a mistake, if they accidentally click on something and maybe they think they downloaded something bad, they should feel comfortable to come to you immediately so you can do something about it. Okay. Make sure those lines of communication are open so that it doesn't go unnoticed. They might have clicked on some malicious software and they didn't tell you, and you're connecting to the same network for doing your banking. You want to know. Okay. So make sure using security software also will protect you well. I'm going to launch another poll here. How many of you, do any of your kids have their own phone? I know a lot of you are going to say yes because you have older kids. So A, yes. B, no. C, no, not yet, but soon. And D, not for a few more years. Do any of your children own a cell phone? So yeah, great. It looks like the majority of you are saying yes, you do, which I would have expected, but actually, it looks like just half of you so far. So half of you say, just under half, yes, and the rest of you not yet. All right, well, even for those of you whose kids are using or have phones now, I do want to talk about one thing about the phone, the part that everybody loves, and that's the camera. And the piece that I want you to be aware of is that if you haven't had this talk with your kids yet, or the first time you get your kid a phone, make sure you have this conversation. That is, they should never, ever, ever feel pressured to take a picture of themselves that they would not want the whole world to see. Okay. They should never feel pressured. Over the course of the pandemic, based on research from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children and of another organization called Thorn, they have noticed a rise in self-produced images of children in compromising ways. And much of the time, that doesn't come from strangers necessarily pressuring them to take them. Sometimes it does, but more often it's coming from peers saying, send me one. And I think I don't know who's listening, so I'm trying to be careful of how I say this, but it's really important that we encourage our children to never feel pressure to take such photos of themselves, no matter what. The other thing I want to relay to you is I was asked by a father probably 7 years ago now, a fantastic question. And he said, my son is a really good kid. But a lot of people like him because he's so nice and he's a good person. What if he ever receives one of those images from a peer? He got very worried because the phone bill is in his name for his son. So if that ever happens to your child, this is the conversation you should have with them as well. Okay. And many officers that I've talked to over the years and in school districts as well, it's really important that they feel they can come and tell you that and then delete it. Do not walk around with it, because technically, if it is someone underage in one of those compromising photos, that possession as well as distribution and creation of those kinds of images is technically a felony. They're not going to punish underage people who are sending and exchanging such photos like they would somebody who might be 50 years old who's asking for it or distributing it or, coercing someone to send it to them. But if there's an investigation, they're already going to know. They're already going to know it went from this device to that device anyway. So better not to be walking around with it. What's a better course of action is for your child to feel they can come to you and tell you that is the action they take and delete it. And then you as their parent, if you feel comfortable, maybe you know the child who sent it to him, could address those parents. But if you don't feel comfortable, and it's very often a classmate, someone in their school, if you feel, less comfortable doing that and you'd rather just report it to the school, that might be a better option for you. You could report it to authorities, but a lot of police officers have said, they're so overwhelmed by so many things that they need to investigate that these kinds of things sort of aren't as high on their list. But it's still very important because who knows who else got the picture. And it is just important your child deletes it and don't redistribute it, but taking that action of telling you and then you telling someone else is the most you can do, okay? Is the best you can do. Anybody have kids who have trouble separating from games? They're in the middle of the game, you say, hey, 10 minutes, 20 minutes left, whatever, and they really have trouble stopping the game. Anybody have kids like that? Yeah, we have a lot of kids like that out there. So again, one thing you can do is use those time limit things that we talked about, like the Xbox family settings. But here's another idea. Consider using timed games instead of games that have no end. Okay, like I love Minecraft, I think it's great, but there can really be no end. You could go on and on and on. There are many games like that. So I'm a big fan of Rocket League. Anyone ever hear of Rocket League? You're just driving cars, trying to hit a soccer ball into a net. And super fun, kids love it. You could win extra time if you do certain tricks with the cars, but ultimately the game ends. And that's a great idea for kids who might have trouble separating from games. FIFA, Madden, NBA 2K21, those games all have times that tick down and end as well. So consider the kinds of games your kids are using. The other option is use the time limit settings that we talked about earlier. But count it down for them. Let them warn them, count it down for them so they know. Okay. On being kind, I will just say, in the interest of time, that it's important that we encourage it, that they're behaving, in ways that are respectful and kind to others. Again, for the reasons we talked about previously, which is online, it's really never private. So if you don't want people seeing what you've done, or finding out that you did something really unkind, just don't do it, especially online. You shouldn't do it anyway for the more moral and ethical reasons, but it's just more permanent online. And there have been enough cases for those of you with older kids. Okay, those of you with older kids, there have been enough cases written about kids who've been whose college acceptances have been rescinded, scholarships have been rescinded because they liked something that someone else wrote. They didn't even write it themselves, but they liked it, and that was enough for a school or prospective employer to say, you know what, you're just not the kind of person that we think upholds our values. And so it's really important. But kindness is not just about not being mean, right? Or saying nice things. Kindness also is around things like respecting privacy. So especially for those of you whose kids don't have phones yet, we see a lot of drama starting in the middle school years. They all get their phones, they all start taking photos, they all start getting their first Instagram accounts, and they start posting like crazy, right? And the drama begins when somebody posts a photo with a bunch of people, but only the person who posted it looks good in it, according to the others. And the others say, they didn't even ask me if they could post it, right? And they look good, but I don't. And so before you get to that point, when you hand your kid a phone for the first time, or even if they already have a phone now, make it a habit and do this yourselves. Hey, you should ask somebody, hey, are you okay if I post this or not online? Have you ever had someone post something about you on Facebook and you wish that they asked you before they did that? Has it ever happened to you? You can say that in the chat. I think it's happened to all of us before. There's really no rules around this etiquette, but the more that we can encourage everyone to respect privacy, the better off we will be. But especially our children who are just starting out into this world. And they could really avoid a lot of heartache later on if they and their close friends agree, hey, I'm going to ask you before I ever post this kind of stuff. Are you okay? Are you okay if I post it? Okay. And as I said earlier, remind our children that they are not equal to the number of likes, followers, comments, friend requests, none of that. Their value is not equal to that. It's too easy for our kids to start equating that with social media presence. So we as parents have to keep on reminding them that is not a reflection of who you are. So be supportive and show them what kindness looks like. When you see good things happening online, share that with them too. Finally, on being savvy, just a few tips, good habits that I want you to walk away with and teach your kids. So it's very easy, as you know, online for people to pretend they're somebody else, that they're somebody else. Right? So if they ever get a friend request from an account that they're not sure who that is, do a reverse image search. Someone puts a photo up of themselves, their account, go to Google, do a reverse image search, which what will happen is you can copy the photo of the account, put it into the Google reverse search, and it will show you whether that photo has shown up in other places. So maybe that person's using a fake photo, it's not really them. That's a good way to know if it's a bot or a catfish, someone that's pretending, someone that isn't who they say they are. Okay. Another thing about trying to distinguish what I can trust and what I can't trust online is just think before you act. When you see a post that makes you angry or makes you go, whoa, I can't believe that, elicits any kind of strong emotion from you, be careful of what that is and whether or not it's really trustworthy. Because sometimes the most suspicious things are simply there to elicit strong emotional responses from you and no other reason. So we're big fans of what's called media literacy skills, and media literacy skills are skills that enable you and your children to think very critically about anything you ever see, whether it's a deceptive ad, news story, a video that they saw online. They're like, is that a hoax or is that real? It's important to ask questions and don't share it or like it or believe it or act on it in any way immediately. Pause, ask questions. I think we'd be in a lot better place if we all did this, including adults. And we have a guide that we developed with the National Association for Media Literacy Education. It goes through scenarios of how you can talk to your kids about stuff they're seeing online. Oh, I heard about this thing, or I saw this ad, and can I buy that, mom or dad? It says that I'm going to lose, or I'll be able to win, an Xbox or the latest sneakers or whatever, free movie passes or free concert tickets. So this is a great guide that I recommend. In the chat, have you ever looked yourself up online, your own name? Has anyone ever looked their own name up online? And if so, what did you find? I have found my cyber twins. I have many of them. Lynette Owens, one of them is in California, owns a hotel catering type of business. Another one you can write in jail. That is not me, but that is my cyber twin. So looking ourselves up online is a good habit to do once in a while, because you might find something that's actually you, or you might find someone who shares your name and a background that you don't want associated with you. I ask this of students in classrooms all the time, and I get so many hands raised. It's amazing what they have found. Some of them have actually found themselves in public, and it's because they did something good for their school and they made the local paper. In one case, a senior in high school told me that she found a post about her that she had no idea about, that a fellow classmate posted. It was it was disturbing for her. And so she is glad she found it. She told the person to take it down, and she reported it to the website or the app that it was posted to, because she was in the process of starting to apply for colleges. And she was very concerned about it being there. So it's not a bad idea, because you might find something good and you might find something troubling. So you don't actually have to go and look every time. You can do something called setting up a Google alert. You just go to google.com/alerts, and then you type in any name, word, phrase. And anytime that becomes public on the internet, you will be alerted by email. I use this for work, to be alerted to things that I research, but you can use it for your name. You can use it for your kids' names. You can do it for any topic for that matter. Okay. But the reason I bring it up is it's just a good idea. It's a good habit to know what might be out there about you. Just so you know, and I love this, my husband has a serial killer with the same name. Okay. So he should be able to explain that away if he knows who his cyber twin is. So I think that if you do this on a regular basis, it'd be good to just know this. Anything that's behind a privacy setting will not be publicly indexable. Okay. So if you have posted anything about your kids, or they post anything on social with their friends, behind privacy settings, that will not show up on a Google search. Okay. Only things that are publicly indexable will. All right. Oops. Okay. But I bring it up because of this number. All right. We have been following research being done every year by the Kaplan Institute. The Kaplan Institute is the group that, however you feel about standardized testing is sort of besides the point, but the Kaplan Institute is the one who helps administer preparatory materials for like the PSATs and the SATs and so on. But they started asking college and university admissions officers in 2014 a question, a bunch of questions, but one of the questions caught our eye. And that question was, beyond the application that the students submit to you, do you look them up on the internet? And in 2014, the answer was 25% said yes. Then the next year, 30, then 35, then 40, and it just kept going up over time. They changed the question a little bit 2 years ago. They didn't just ask, would you look them up? They now ask, if you look them up, what did you find? So the most recent survey was January of this year. They do it every January. And 65% said they would do it. And of those that said they had done it, let's see here. 58% said they found something that concerned them. It concerned them about that student because it made them think twice about whether or not they wanted them at their school. But 42% said that they found something that sold them. It convinced them, yes, this is the kind of person we want at our school. So I bring this up because, as I said earlier, that very often when we talk to kids about using technology, it's a long list of what not to do. But it's equally important that we encourage our children to use technology in ways that actually might be helpful for them, for others, and even for the world around them. One of those ways is that this might be them one day, this 42%, if your child is interested in pursuing, maybe college or maybe a job someday. So what are some ways that we can encourage good uses? You might be doing some of these already. Put it in the chat. Are there good uses that your kids are doing with technology today besides playing Minecraft? They can be promoting a cause that matters a lot to them. They could be raising money for their local scout troop or a nonprofit organization, their school. These are great uses of technology. There are wonderful sites out there and apps to showcase their accomplishments. If they're a writer or an artist or a musician, performer, athlete, there are apps and sites out there where at young ages, you can still keep it private. You don't have to show it to the whole world, but as they get older, many of you have your oldest child already 15 and above, could be removing this. You can set it with a password when they're younger, remove that password requirement and let their work be shown. I'm a big fan of contests. So if your child has a skill, something they really like to do, there's fantastic contests out there, video contests, drawing contests, poetry, writing, all kinds of things. They may never win. It doesn't matter. They can start to develop a portfolio of stuff they've created. And contests are great ways to learn how to stick to rules, to a timeline. Maybe they even have to collaborate with other people. But I'm a big fan of contests as a way of using technology and the internet in a positive way. Any other ideas? I think some people say Girl Scouts. Yeah, I mean, my daughter, when she was younger, she was doing a lot of promoting of Girl Scout cookies, actually, when she was younger online. So a lot of what we talked about tonight was directed to you. And just this past month, we launched an academy for younger kids. This is probably more for the 7 to 10-year-old ranges here, called the Kids Cyber Academy. And these are very short, fun little animated videos that talk about concepts like passwords and privacy and security. And we have more coming. And after they watch it, it's about 2 minutes cartoon, they have to do a Kahoot quiz that helps to reinforce the learning. There's a guide for you as their parent, or if there are any teachers on the line, you could do this with an entire classroom of kids as well. And we have an activity sheet they can print out. It has coloring pages and word finds and so on. But I highly recommend that for some of the concepts that we talked about tonight, if you want to relay that with your kids, come visit us at our Cyber Academy. I think they'll have a lot of fun. These are really fun, colorful videos that help to teach them some of the concepts in a kid-friendly way. And they all know what Kahoot is. Everybody uses Kahoot in school. So it's just a fun sort of 5 questions, see how well they understand the concepts. We have new ones coming, and that's going to be coming in the next couple of months, but these 5 are already available on our site. And so just to wrap everything up here, and I do apologize, we're a little bit over time, but I wanted to make sure I covered a lot of this for you, is stay actively involved. Thank you for being here tonight, because that is a way of engagement, and keep communicating with each other all the other parents in your communities, with your schools about how they're using technology in the classroom, with your children, obviously, about how they're using technology, and stay up to date. I also challenge you after you leave tonight, to do one new thing. Do something you didn't do before tonight. Maybe it's turning on the privacy settings, using one of these family apps. Maybe it is trying our cyber academy. Maybe it's encouraging your kid to look themselves up online and see what they find. But do one new thing, okay? And before I get to questions, I do want to show this screen again, as I showed earlier. These are the attendance codes for all of those. Thank you for all of you from everywhere that you attended tonight. If you need to report an attendance code to the organizer of the event from your school, this is your attendance code. And you can find lots of great resources on our website, which I'll show you the URL in a minute, as well as from PTO Today, who is our partner for tonight's event. They have great resources, and they've also translated theirs into Spanish as well. This is the feedback form that you'll see when you leave tonight, really quick. And if you want to include your email address with your feedback form, you'll be automatically entered to win a copy of one of our products for laptops and phones and iPads and things like that. It protects up to 5 devices in your house for a year subscription. So thank you again. I know I'm over time, but I am going to go ahead and get to some of these questions now. But I wanted to be respectful of everyone's time. And this has been recorded. The recording will be made available to the organizers at your schools if they have made a request to our team member, who was the main point of contact, is Kimberly. If you make a request to Kimberly, if you are an organizer, she will make the recording available to you once it's ready. So I want to get to some of the questions here. And for anyone, this is how you can reach me. My contact information's there. So what age is typical for getting the first phone? This is the question I get that's so hard to answer. I appreciate the question. Let me talk first about the statistics here in the United States. I would say over half of kids who begin middle school is typically the age when children get their first phone. If you're not ready, and I'm not a big fan of smartphones right away, you can do a prepaid Go phone. We did that for our kids. It's a AT&T. It's a smartphone which has internet access and have apps, but you can limit the amount of contacts they have in it. You can also say only internet access on Wi-Fi and not through the phone plan. You can also prepay, so that's only $25, $50 at a time, and the money ticks down, so they can't just use it endlessly, right? It teaches your children to budget how they're using it as well. So we felt very comfortable with that as the way of our kids started out. We did it at the beginning of middle school because they were taking the bus for the first time and were coming home, walking for a bit to get to the house. And I wasn't back yet from work, so I felt safer for them. So really the answer to what is the age is up to you, what you need and are comfortable with as a family. The second question is whether or not it needs to be a smartphone. I mean, certainly not an iPhone, especially if you feel your child isn't old enough to be responsible. Those things drop and crack all the time, and they are not cheap. As beautiful as they are, they're not cheap. Question, is there a presentation like this for kids? Well, I hope I answered that with the Kids Academy, but we do actually have a presentation for both ages under 10, as well as 10 to 14, and even older than that. Before the pandemic, we actually went into classrooms, which was one of the best parts of my job. I loved doing it, but we're happy to do it. If you're interested, please contact me. We were happy to do it in a virtual format. We would just need to work with the classroom teacher to make that happen. Okay, thoughts on Snapchat? Well, what can I say? So Snapchat last month decided, and actually someone I know has just become the head of their whole safety division at Snapchat, which is a fantastic thing, by the way. They have announced they'll be launching a new family settings app. Believe that or not, I don't know what the name of it is. They won't reveal the name of it yet, but they realize now, just like all the other apps, that as good as they can be and useful as they can be for people, some of it is also troubling for younger users. So be ready for that. Snapchat it started off as an app where you could just be yourself because anything you posted would just disappear, right? The ephemeral experience is what they used to say. Very quickly, though, like every other app, they all look the same now. They all give you stories. They all give you, content from news organizations and brands and famous people and so on. They all kind of look the same now to me. So that's my thoughts on Snapchat. They'll be around for a while, but they're sort of quietly behind there as Facebook just gets the brunt of all the criticism. But they're all kind of in the same boat, in my opinion. Look for that family settings that's coming from Snapchat if your child's still too young. Okay. How do I delete Discord and Roblox permanently? Ooh, that's a good question. I think you'll have to look on each of those apps accounts and actually there is a way to permanently delete your accounts, not just on Discord and Roblox, but also on every other app. So just deleting the app from a device does not necessarily delete it, the account. You have to delete the account, not just the app on the device, because as long as your child still has an account, they can download the app on another device and just log in to their account. So that's how it's permanent. You've got to report that to Discord and Roblox to remove the account. I think I'm going to, for other questions that I wasn't able to get to, I'd love to be able to provide answers separately in the interest of time here. So I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. To Gigi for her on the line for our Spanish-speaking audience. And for those of you, if you could spread the word, we are hosting several more events between now and the end of May, or sorry, the middle of May, actually. So if there's anybody in your community that missed tonight, also, they can listen to the recording, but we do update the material very frequently. So I recommend, if they can come to a future event, they go to the website you see on the screen, trendmicro.com/internet-safety, and pick events, and you will see all the dates in the future that we are hosting this session. It was really fun having you. There was a huge crowd here tonight, so thank you very much for your time. And I wish you all the best as we wrap up this new year, this year and head into a new year. Good night.